Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Sabrina Paganoni, and this is our weekly HEALEY ALS platform trial update. Today, I'm here with our patient navigation team, Catherine Small and Alison Bullitt. So welcome to all of you. And I know people are joining from the waiting room. So we'll give everyone a few seconds to join from the waiting room. And on our first slide, you can see that the platform trial is really sponsored by sponsored by the HEALEY Center, but it's with co-funding and support from a lot of different groups. So I do want to acknowledge our academic partners, industry partners, patient groups and foundations who are all coming together to support the trial. And while the trial is managed and sponsored centrally by the HEALEY Center, it's really great to be working with so many partners that really add to the experience, really help with their support. And it's really like a large scale operation. And we really want to benefit the entire community as we run this trial. So if we go to the next slide, I want to summarize, as we know we are getting more viewers and more new faces every week, and also people who are following us via the recording. So I just wanted to go back to the core principles of the platform trial as we start this webinar series in 2023. We're using a shared infrastructure and master protocol that allow for operational and scientific efficiencies that are only possible in a platform approach. So these are sort of things that are we included in the platform trial that allow us to gain efficiencies compared to a traditional standalone trial. So specifically, we are using this shared infrastructure. So when somebody enrolls in the platform trial, the participant will be part of this shared infrastructure and will be assigned to any of the regimens that are open at that particular point in time. So right now we have one regimen open, while we're opening 2 more regimens to be started soon in 2023. And because we have this shared model where we can share placebo data across different regimens, we are able to accelerate the time that it takes to test drugs. We can cut costs because we have this shared model. And most importantly, from a patient perspective, we reduce the chances of placebo, being on placebo. So specifically, for every 4 people who enroll in the platform trial, only 1 will be assigned to placebo because we have a 3-to-1 randomization ratio. Next slide. And so in terms of how is each drug tested, the schema or the overall structure for each drug is the same. So specifically, when somebody is interested in enrolling in the trial, that person will be screened for eligibility. We need to make sure that it's safe for the person to be in the trial. And we also have some criteria for eligibility for a number of reasons, but essentially to be able to detect a treatment effect if one exists. And so that person, if somebody is eligible, then that person will be randomized 3-to-1 active to placebo. So the comparison during the placebo randomized period is between people who are on active drug versus placebo. And the placebo-controlled randomized period lasts 24 weeks, which is about 6 months. At the end of one individual's participation in the placebo-controlled trial, that person will be eligible automatically for what we used to call open label extension. And now moving forward, we're really going to transition to the best nomenclature, which is really active treatment extension. So what does that mean? When somebody enters the trial, essentially, we measure the experience both during the 6-month trial when we compare active to placebo in that placebo-controlled period, but then we give everyone the opportunity to continue to receive active treatment. That's why it's an active treatment extension. And then the comparison is between the people who started active treatment early compared to the people who started treatment later, 6 months later. So essentially, we're going to be comparing sort of the people in orange, let's say, compared to the people on placebo for over the entire experience of the trial. That includes both the placebo-controlled period and the active treatment extension. So the active treatment extension is an integral part of the trial and does add a lot of information in terms of safety and efficacy of each given drug. In fact, this is the strategy or the overall schema that's very similar in terms of having a 6-month placebo period and then placebo control period and then an active treatment extension. That's the same schema that was used in the CENTAUR trial that led to the approval of Relyvrio, the new drug that was approved for ALS. And so again, and it's also shared by many different trials. Next slide. So in terms of what we're doing in 2023, for those of you who are new, we have included 5 drugs, also known as regimens, and here they're just labeled by the number, by the letter, I should say, A, B, C, D, or E. And those are the ones that have been actually tested in the trial. We completed the enrollment for the first 4, A, B, C, and D, and we're still enrolling for the 5th, or Regimen E, which is testing trialose, which is manufactured by Silos Therapeutics. That's enrolling now. We still have the few last spots. I'm going to mention that, talk about that in a second. But I do want to let people know that we are actively working. We are in the so-called startup period to be able to start enrolling for regimens F and G. Regimen F tests a drug that's manufactured by Calico, and Regimen G tests a drug that's manufactured by Denali. Both are in startup, and both are expected to begin enrollment over the next few months in 2023. So again, stay tuned for that. We will let you know essentially in real time when we start enrollment for these regimens, but those 2 are going to be going on concurrently in 2023. Next slide. Now we are still enrolling. We want to complete enrollment in Regimen E before we move on to regimens F and G. So specifically, we are enrolling for Regimen E to test trialose, also known as SLS05, which is made by Silos Therapeutics. If you have any questions about the mechanism of action of this drug, or what participation in Regimen E would entail, please watch those recordings. They're available at those links, also at those QR codes. And as a reminder, for those of you who are new, the QR codes actually work through the screen. So if you point your camera to those, they will take you directly to the registration or to the recording page. Next slide. So for Regimen E, we're actively enrolling at 60 sites. And again, for those of you who are new, we started the trial with a group of 54 sites, and many of them are participating in Regimen E, and those are labeled in blue. And then we added new sites for regimens D and E. Those are labeled in green. So it's a mix essentially of the original sites and the green sites. And the majority of sites in our network are participating in Regimen E. We have a network of over 70 sites, but a few couldn't participate in Regimen E because of bandwidth. Sometimes there's staff turnover at the site, or some sites could not support an intravenous regimen like E. Regimen E is actually our first intravenous infusion. It requires basically weekly treatments. The majority of the treatments can be done at home. So I want to emphasize that while this is an intravenous regimen, after the first 4 infusions at the site, home infusions can be supported. Next slide. And so we are almost done enrollment. I love the number 90%. And so we are, again, trying to wrap up this study as soon as possible. We do have a few spots. We're almost there, but not quite yet. So please contact your sites if, if you're interested in participating. Next slide. I would want to mention that we have weekly recordings available on the MGH website. Again, you can use the QR code, the link, or just Google it on the MGH HEALEY Center website. And importantly, there is an arrow there that points to last week's webinar where we took questions specifically about Regimen C. So if you have any questions, please go back to that. I do want to mention that we're gonna also focus next week's webinar on Regimen C as well. So I want to give people kind of the heads up so that if you are a study team and want to invite Regimen C participants, please do so. Or if you are a participant yourself or know any participants, please let them know that we're gonna talk about Regimen C again next week. So specifically the topic is that Regimen C open label extension, so that kind of the active treatment extension that we discussed earlier is going to end for Regimen C. But the good news is that everyone who is in that program can roll over to an expanded access protocol, or also known as EAP, basically continuing to receive the drug. Also, the company that's managing Clean Nanomedicine, that's managing this EAP or expanded access, is committing more spots to people living with ALS. So that means that in addition to people who participated in the platform trial and specifically in Regimen C open label extension, in addition to those individuals, more spots will become available soon for people who have not participated in the trial yet, but want to have access to the drug. So again, we focused on that topic last week, and we will do so again next week, but the recording from last week is already available. Next slide. And as always, if you have any questions, Catherine and Alison are here, and they're available to talk to you by phone, email, and again, we'll continue to have these webinars so that we can continue to take your questions weekly, but also outside of the webinar. If you have questions, please contact Alison and Catherine directly. I do want to say that we will continue to offer these webinar weekly, and that's the registration link and QR code to register. We also send out notifications about the trial and about ALS research by way of what we call the ALS link. So that's a newsletter. We send out maybe 1 or 2 emails every week. It's not too many emails, but if you want to have information kind of by email, and so that also will allow you to receive our notifications. And again, please use the QR code and link to register. And actually, as we end the sort of the presentation and we start taking your questions, and as people type questions, I wanted to ask Catherine or Alison if you have anything to say in terms of how to best interact or contact you. I know you posted some helpful links in the chat or comments, but Catherine or Alison, anything else you want to add?
Yeah, yes, Catherine, thank you. She posted the email and the phone number in the chat. Also, we're on social media, we're on Facebook. So if you need to reach out, you know, whatever means works for you, please feel free to do so. We're happy to help.
And I'll add too, so you can contact me for, excuse me, for a variety of reasons. So whether you want to submit a question in advance for this webinar, suggest a topic for these webinars. If you're having trouble finding information about the trial, if you want help linking up with a site or exploring local site options, getting in touch with the study team, or learning about the drug science behind any of our regimens, I'm also your go-to person for that. So really any reason that you can think of to reach out, please do so.
Thank you. And in fact, we, Catherine and Alison kindly relay questions that they've been receiving during the week. So one question I know that Alison has received is whether, you know, it's too early or not to start contacting the sites for upcoming regimens. And specifically, the question was also whether sites are keeping the list of interested participants for the next few regimens. So I would absolutely encourage you to contact your sites and express your interest in terms of the upcoming regimens. I know that at our site, our nursing team and clinical coordinators do note people's interest. So even if the upcoming regimens are not live right now, they do note their interest. And so again, I cannot speak for all the sites, but certainly it's not too early to reach out. In fact, I would really encourage everyone to reach out and make sure that you are on the radar at your local site, you know, for upcoming regimens, because they will open, you know, over the next few weeks. So there will be spots available. So, and thank you, Catherine, for posting the list of sites. So I have a question here about Regimen D. That's a great question. So we haven't reported results yet. And the question is, what are the reasons? What's the reason for this? Well, the reason is that we are still analyzing some of the data. And so, you know, certainly we will, you know, share results as soon as they're available. And we always do so also on this particular webinar. So certainly more to come on that. I don't have the exact timelines yet. I'm hoping that that's going to happen again over the next few weeks. As you may remember, we didn't have the slide about biomarkers on these webinar slide deck today, but you know, we are collecting an enormous amount of data. That's not just sort of, you know, the usual clinical data that we collect, but also a lot of additional biomarkers. That's actually one of the goals of the trial, is also to develop new biomarkers and new ways of looking at results, and that just requires more time for our statisticians to parse through the data and really finalize the results. So we'll certainly communicate them soon. There's another question I see about international participation. So are international participants allowed in the trial? Yes, absolutely. There's no limitation in terms of nationality or place of residence. The one thing I would say is that there is a requirement for people to participate, to visit the sites, and so people will have to move or travel frequently, and obviously the exact location will matter. We have had a number of international participants so far. Specifically, I'm thinking of people from Canada who have been participating at some of the northern sites, especially I know in the Seattle area. They have enrolled a lot of people from Canada, and also we have had a number of people from Central and South America who have been enrolling at some of our Florida sites or Texas sites. So definitely, obviously, geographic proximity helps just in terms of travel. But if that's not a barrier, if travel is not a barrier, and being on site for scheduled appointments is not a barrier, then people can participate. So there's a question about, what happens, the specific question is, what happens if you don't get full enrollment for Regimen E? Well, we will definitely get enrollment. I just want to clarify. We are almost done. Literally, we just have, the last few spots. This is a very dynamic situation. We are operating obviously on many sites. I have full confidence that we will close enrollment very soon. It's just, obviously dynamic, because we have to, where people come in, they have to screen, we have to make sure that they are eligible. And once they're deemed eligible, then we can sort of close enrollment. And honestly, I can't wait to announce that here, but I think we're really, really close. Great. And so there's a question about how will the shared placebo group work going forward? Does it start over? So I just want to make sure I fully understand the question, but essentially what happens is that so far, we have been accumulating placebo data. And so everyone who has ever participated in the trial and has been on placebo continues to really give contributions to the field. So I think that's also very rewarding to know that, that the contributions continue to sort of amplify by contributing to ongoing and future regimens. So that's also a great resource for the community, that sort of shared placebo group. That's essentially a natural history study that's embedded in the trial, because we continue to, to accumulate new placebo data, and we continue to follow new participants. And so that in itself is sort of an incredible resource for the community to continue to develop biomarkers, new outcome measures. We are doing genetic tests on everyone. So we're continuing to learn. And again, we don't have the final results yet, simply because we are still processing all of this. But I know that over the next few months, we will be, getting full results, final results for many of these outcomes. And so we can definitely publish and continue to contribute to the field. So yes, that placebo group remains very active, in the sense that we continue to learn from that group. And then it's possible that in the future, we will retire at some point those placebo data if, again, if there are substantial changes in standard of care, or if we think like we're ready to move on to a different design, that placebo data could potentially be retired and kind of not contribute actively to the trial anymore at some point in the future. We haven't made any decisions. Again, I'm just saying that as a possibility. And if so, we would also be able to share the data more freely and kind of deposit that in public databases. So I really think that the placebo group is really critical in terms of contributing now, but also contributing in the future. And so we will definitely, it's really a precious resource. So I just want to thank everyone who participated. And so there's a question about, so that is kind of the placebo group is kind of going back. For example, if Regimen E placebo will be shared with the first regimens, A, B, C, and D. No, actually the sharing is more forward, kind of, the older regimens contribute to new and future regimens. It doesn't really go in the reverse, because the data is being locked for the previous ones. But that's a good question. So it kind of, at some point we have to release and lock the data and kind of complete the data analysis for the first few regimens. But then, so the placebo data doesn't contribute kind of back into the past, but certainly the placebo data that was accumulated in the past contributes now and will continue to contribute into the future. So all great questions, and really there's a lot of details to sort of the platform approach. The more I think about it, the more we see it as it plays out, the more excited I am about the potential and really the power of that approach, because we can do so much more. And certainly we will continue to do more, more research as we get all the final data and start with publications. We are planning a number of publications. So questions about the Regimen E EAP startup and when will it start? So we are actively working on startup. We are actively working with the sites. I'm really hoping to be able to have the first enrollment either in March or April. And at that point, as sites come online, we'll definitely share their location, and it's a subset. It's 25 sites of the 60 that have been active in Regimen E. So great, all great questions this week. And so I think we took all the questions for this week. I do want to invite everyone to join us next week again, when we will be taking more questions about Regimen C in particular. And so thank you again. I see a last minute question. And we were just talking about the Trialo's EAP and questions about how many sites, how many participants. So it's going to be 70 participants at the 25 sites. And hopefully we'll continue to grow this type of program also, in the future for both, these Trialo's drug as well as other drugs. And this is for people who are not participating or not eligible for other clinical trials. I just want to mention that. So it's a separate program. So I just don't want to confuse sort of the actual regimen with or clinical trials with expanded access protocols. Those are for two different groups of people. Great. Thank you so much. And we'll definitely see you next week. Thank you.